What's up, players? I hope you're having a great day. Today, we're getting into the Lethality tier list. Now, back in December, right after Houndmaster came out, I did my own ranking by greatness, multiple attributes, and I put them on a number scaling. Today is purely about Lethality, who is the strongest killer in the game. And let's just get right into it. Starting off, of course, Nurse is number one, but I think right now is the best time to make a case for anybody else. Like, the next three, I'd say, in certain instances, could be better than Nurse. I think Nurse right now is still easily the strongest killer in the game, but she lacks in map mobility, which the next three killers absolutely have double, if not triple, the map pressure that Nurse would. Obviously, Nurse can go through walls. She has basically the lowest skill floor in the game, and she's really just the easiest killer to pick up in instantly 4K. Number two, I'd say Blight. Even though he's gotten some minor tweaking over the last couple months, he's still in that solid number two spot. No other killer really comes close to Blight in terms of his chase power and his map mobility. I mean, he can go from coast to coast in just one use of his power and get it back in 10 seconds. Now, number 3 and 4 were kind of a toss-up for me because I view both of these killers in completely different aspects. For my number 3, I have Dracula, and I think the minor nerfs that he's gotten pretty much in the last 6 months have been really not as bad as people make it out to be. I think he got a half second added to his shapeshift cooldown, which you can still run clock tower gears, which is disgusting. I don't know why that's still an add-on. 10% is it is a deal breaker, certainly. But yeah, Dracula is still insanely good. I've gotten really good at the Hellfire, and I truly believe that Dracula is not miles better than number 4, but I think he's significantly better in multiple instances, and that's why I can't really put number 4 over Dracula. Now, I think Kaneki will round out the S tier, and really, he's gotten so many nerfs, just recently, while I'm recording this, he just got a bug fix that allowed him to catapult himself and basically get incredible amount of speed, but he doesn't go any faster. Yeah, fix a bug issue where the ghoul could launch himself at a faster speed after using a second dash immediately after the first one. Apparently that was a bug, which it kind of was, but I'm not sure if that maxes out his speed or they added a cooldown. I'd have to test it. But yeah, that rounds out the S tier. I think Kaneki, with his free injure and his still incredible map mobility, really makes him as strong as Dracula, as Blight. Back in the day, say this as if it wasn't a month ago, he could definitely rival Nurse for that number 1 spot, just based on how disgusting his chase ability was. But that has been significantly nerfed. Now, after breaking a pallet, you lose 2 tokens. It's a little bit worse. But that rounds out the S tier. Starting into the A+ tier, I actually have Billy. In many circumstances, I think that Billy has a lot of counterplay that the S tier killers don't. And so there isn't an inherent weakness with S tier killers, right? They will cover the map fast, which Billy does. They will down people fast, which Billy does. But they don't have a clear outlier, right? Billy, I think, because of the abundance of indoor maps, which is up to, I think, 7 or 8 right now, it's just not a consistent experience playing Billy, and so I can't put him in S tier. I do think he's number 5, and I think with the upcoming changes to map offerings, I do think Billy could be in the S tier and like topping off Kaneki. Now, this might be a hot take to some, but I actually think Oni is the 6th best killer in the game right now. This recent buff that allows anybody to hit 180 flicks and just give you full control over your demon dash is genuinely just, it makes him the perfect killer. I mean, like, there is clear counterplay, pre-drop pallets early, play safe, don't let him get his power, and just hope that he doesn't find you when he does have demon dash finally. And so, well, I don't think Oni is oppressive by any means, but I do think with the right player, and especially in my hands, I think Oni rounds out pretty much almost every killer. Next up, I actually have Spirit, which I don't think Spirit's any worse, but I do think Billy and Oni are better than her. And simply for the fact that they have such a high mobility power that downs instantly. And so with Spirit, you either have to run 1 or 2 recharge add-ons and also a couple anti-healing perks. And especially like genetic limits, some kind of exhaustion. Iron Will is still very prevalent now that it is 100%. And next up, I do have the twins. And I was really contemplating between Oni and twins, because right now twins has a bug where Victor just won't latch on to anybody. If you crouch, Victor doesn't latch on to anybody. So surprise, surprise, the bug riddled killer is quite unplayable. I know, shocker to nobody. But the twins are still an incredibly strong killer. I would go on the level of saying they are oppressive, and especially because it seems that Victor is just back in 10 seconds. And I understand that Victor is the entire power. Victor is such an oppressive power that I think it should be on a longer cooldown, similar to like launch Chucky with 18-20 second cooldown. It seems like if you kick Victor, he just comes back in 10 seconds. You crush Victor when he's on your back, he comes back in 10 seconds. Like, I do think if they are ever to fix the bugs with the twins, they should definitely look into making the cooldowns longer, just because of how fast Victor moves and how fast he can down people. Next up, speaking of moving fast and downing people fast, I have the Houndmaster, actually. Even though she's gotten a couple of bug fixes, and they're not even really nerfs, I still think Houndmaster is one of the best killers in the game. And honestly, I don't see her enough with how powerful she is. And I really don't know how you could balance her. She is borderline oppressive. And really her high mobility, her basically shotgun of a dog that is very hard to miss with. And you honestly have to be trying to miss sometimes. She's just so incredibly strong, and just like the twins, she's pretty buggy. So a lot of the times the counterplay just comes down to hoping the game sucks ass, which isn't fun on the survivor side, don't get me wrong, but also there's not really much you can do. And this might be a hot take, but next up I actually have Unknown. I think this is easily the best projectile killer in the game, and the amount of map mobility and just instant teleport that Unknown has is genuinely unrivaled. Which Unknown, you can hide your hallucinations anywhere you want, and you also have add-ons like Blurry Photo that will make you even more lethal coming out of a teleport. A lot of people underrate just how strong the UVX is, simply because they're playing Unknown wrong. You want to play like a hit and run until you can snowball off of how many people you have weakened. And if you didn't know, the more survivors you have weakened actually decreases the hallucination spawn time, on top of weakening people, hitting people with the UVX. This killer has so much going for them that really the only counterplay is hoping that the killer misses. And certainly you can remove hallucinations, but I don't think that is enough to really slow down the unknown. Really one of the most well-designed killers they've released since Wesker. And yeah, definitely an A+ tier killer. And to round out the A+ tier, I have Plague. Now, Plague has basically free infection. You just infect the gen, 60 seconds goes by. If the survivor touches that, boom, that's a free injure. This killer has so much map control, and if this killer had any way to down people without the Corrupt Purge, that isn't just a basic attack, I think they would genuinely be in the top 3. Plague, another really well-designed killer that I think a lot of people don't understand how to play against, and it is really just great overall. Now we're getting into the A tier, which are killers that I think either suffer from bugs, map design, really just like limited add-ons or playstyles. And so now we have Singularity, who currently is still affected by a bug that makes the placing your camera pods very, very laggy, very buggy, and overall is just not a fun experience. Otherwise, when they fix this bug, I would put him in the A+ tier. But other than that, like, his catch-up ability is so fast. His really only counterplay is EMPs, which are still really strong, and I think they should be. But having the ability to destroy cameras remotely is so nice. Having that auto-aim is really, really nice too, and easily the best trap killer in the game.
After Singularity, I have Springtrap. Now, this is just based off of my PTB reaction to Springtrap, but I do think his 20 seconds of stealth just coming out of a door is so strong, and the axe has such a high skill ceiling that I would honestly put him just a little bit below unknown. Upon further testing, when the full chapter comes out, I will give my full opinion, but just off of the PTB, I will have him in the high A tier.
Next up, I have Artist, who I think has that same macro control that Unknown has, but is doing it in a different way. You kind of, instead of having a variable controlled time to down a survivor, you just have a controlled time to down a survivor. And so they are definitely harder to play than Unknown. But I think that is made up by how wide of a hitbox the birds have. And as I mentioned, to describe the A tier, she definitely lacks from map design. A lot of verticality can either be your downfall or your biggest friend. And so this killer definitely takes skill, but the Artist forces survivors into situations that they basically have no control over. And so I think a lot of survivors conflate that into a killer being skillless. And she's still really good. Some of her add-ons I think definitely need an overpass, which they're doing with the FNAF chapter, which is good. She really only has 4 or 5 viable add-ons, and I think her iridescence can definitely be a funny time, but really it's just this killer is really the macro queen. Next up, we definitely have my boy Wesker, who I think has fallen in the ranks due to a massive gutting of his infection, which I don't think people know this. It takes 2 whole minutes to become fully infected, which time it takes like 5 seconds to spray. It's just incredible how much they have nerfed this killer, especially because of how well designed he is. And they kind of just took the easy route instead of actually making something that benefits both sides, killer and survivor. And really, after having your hands on 3 bounds in 2v8, going back to 1v4 is just disappointing. And so I was really praying that they would have a Wesker overhaul with the FNAF chapter coming out, but we can really only hope for the mid-chapter. This killer desperately needs buffs. His really only counterplay and kind of neuters his power is pallets, and most of Wesker's overinflated strength is entirely derived from skill. And so the average player might not really struggle, but someone that is really good can make Wesker seem a lot better than he actually is. Now, after Wesker, I have Pyramid Head, who I think has his really one benefit is how easy it is to tunnel. And a playstyle that I have adopted whenever I play Pyramid Head is to get my pain res immediately, to hopefully get them tormented, and then send them to a cage, and then you can hook them right away without having to, you can just tunnel them off the cage and hook them. I think if we really wanted to make an overpass to his add-ons, there definitely has to be something in his kit that is a little bit toned down, whether that be the base range and then buffing the range add-ons. Who knows? But I definitely think this killer is in a really good spot, and his ability to just ignore second chance and anti-tunnel perks is definitely what makes him really strong right now. And I think a better Pyramid Head player than I am certainly will make him look A+ tier, if not like in the top 7, top 8. And I got multiple comments on my last tier list saying that I underrate Wraith. No, I don't. If you actually watch the video, which you can go click up in the top corner, I didn't underrate Wraith. You just weren't listening. And so I do have Wraith in the A tier. I think he's a really good killer. His ability to use his speed add-ons and other haste perks in order to body block survivors and get around them is so strong. He has his pallet break add-ons that just chew through pallets. He has his inherent stealth, which I honestly think is the best in the game.
Actually have Nemesis in the lower A tier, and I think I would place Nemesis a little bit higher, but it is really just a personal skill issue. For some reason, I can't make this killer work. But yeah, Nemesis, after his buff, they finally made Liquor Tongue not one of the worst add-ons in the game, if not the worst. He destroys pallets so fast. He has a high incentive to use his whip now. If not, just you should only be using your whip. Your M1 is really there to kill zombies faster if you're in tier 3. Really just an overall solid killer. The amount of information that he gets from survivors vaccinating is limited, but it is very valuable. His ability to chew through pallets, similar to the way that Wraith can, is really what makes him so strong. Even though Nemesis doesn't have a movement ability, his zombies still can provide useful information and also can kind of harass survivors if they're resetting, healing, doing generators. Really just a kind of nice thing to have on the playing field.
So now we have Xenomorph, who I think after the recent buffs in the mid-chapter definitely has gotten a lot better and a lot easier to play. There's finally a reason to use your tail attack when you should just regularly M1. Even though they are still trying to make turrets a little bit stronger, I think the biggest downside to Xenomorph is simply just whatever map you spawn into. If you didn't know, killer items like Sadako TVs, Resident Evil chests, and Xenomorph tunnels / turrets spawn wherever regular chests spawn. And so these spawns typically are close to gens, but they're not always guaranteed. And so if you have a tunnel that is 8 meters away from a gen, and then you have 2 gens that don't even have a tunnel nearby, it can really make it hard to play this killer. Now, getting into the B tier, I do have them grouped. I do have a few killers grouped separately from the rest of the B tier, and I think these are killers that could use minor buffs or overall just map improvements. And first off, I think Pinhead is the best B tier killer in the game. I did have him in A tier, but the more and more I play this killer, the more I realize that sometimes you just have to chop it up to a skill issue and move on. I think this killer clearly has a really high skill ceiling, but what really makes Pinhead stand out is his add-ons. Having original pain and impaling wire is, there's nothing that really comes close, and learning how the box spawns definitely makes this killer a lot better. Really, I think they could make the box juggling add-ons partially base kit and then tweak them from there. Right now, it seems like you have to fully devote your build into one half of Pinhead's kit, and that kind of slows him down in a sense. And so I really can't put him in A tier, but I think with a couple quality of life improvements and a minor add-on tweak, he could be in the bottom of A tier. I actually have Huntress, who a lot of people think is the best ranged attack killer, and I can see where they're coming from, certainly. As someone with a lot of practical aim and projectile aim, I think Huntress is definitely good, but as I said, with a couple map tweaks and really just removing a lot of clutter that will eat up a hatchet throw, I think Huntress could be a lot better. Now, that being said, the base kit changes to give her 2 extra hatchets and removing her infantry belt and loop definitely were not good changes. I think there was a lot more you could do, especially like shiny pin. I think you could make the base kit, which they tried, and it was way too strong, but they overbuffed it and then like never revisited it. So shiny pin is still really good. But a couple minor tweaks to maps will definitely make Huntress a almost A tier killer. And like I said, I'm recording this the day before FNAF BTB, so I'll have my hands on the Vecna buff. But I do think Vecna is in that upper echelon of B tier, simply for the fact that his powers are really good in tandem with each other. Not in tandem, but in succession with each other. You know, you mage hand, get a hit, skeletons get a hit, fly over, or sphere before you pick up, and then fly over after you hook somebody. You just have this constant cycle of using your abilities, and I think you could honestly make all of his abilities besides sphere like 12 seconds, 15 seconds. You know, they wanted to nerf the Hellfire by like 3 seconds, and yet skeletons are still on a 25-second cooldown. Vecna could be in the A tier with these recent buffs these new buffs that he's going to get. Now, to get into the really meat and potatoes of the B tier, I actually have Freddy with his rework back in January. I kind of underrated him. I didn't think he was going to be that strong. I thought it was just like clown with map mobility, which his map mobility is really strong. Being able to teleport to generators certainly allows you to use eruption, oppression, even overcharge. Overcharge is unironically really good on Freddy because it will wake up a survivor, and so you can use perks like Unforeseen. Even Trails is really good on Freddy. And so overall, I think this rework to him has finally lifted him out of the bottom 3 killers in the game. And next up, Knight, who I recently, the last couple months, did a deep dive into playing Knight. And I will say that Knight is a pretty damn good killer. I don't think anybody's going to debate that, but he is still boring to play against. He's not boring to play. He's incredibly boring to play against. And I'm not sure why I have people debating that. Getting chased by AI 50% of the game is not enjoyable for anybody. And this killer's entire power is centered around AI. So, yeah, that's how I feel about Knight. Obviously, he's a really good killer. Being able to zone survivors is incredibly strong. The Carnifex is still his best Knight, and he can just chew through pallets. And especially because he has the axe head that reduces his Carnifex's cooldown by like 20%, I think, is almost a must-have if it wasn't for his Map of the Realm, and Dried Horse Meat. After night, I do have Bubba, who I think is kind of the perfect B tier killer. He's not too strong. He has clear counterplay, windows and pallets, and I think he's in a really good space right now. I do believe that his collision box could be a little bit smaller. Really just like rounding corners I struggle with, so maybe it's just a skill issue. But I do think Bubba is a really good killer, and honestly, he kind of is in a perfect place right now. There is a nasty bug that I've been seeing a lot more happen, where you just break a pallet, your power bugs out, and then anytime you press M2, it's just this weird clicking sound, and you can't use your chainsaw. So when they fix that, I do think Bubba could bump up a couple spots. Maybe even be in that upper echelon of B tier, where he just needs a couple of tweaks in order to get up into A tier. Now, after Bubba, I think Demogorgon is honestly, he's still a really good killer. And I think the people underrating Demo certainly are just not really using his power that well. Barb's Glasses is still incredibly strong. The Lycan is still an incredibly strong add-on, especially with how much info you get off of it. His teleport speed is basically like Dredge in Nightfall levels, and there is a bug that I think should be base kit, but it does need some visual tuning, where you can move before you get out of the portal entirely. So it definitely adds to the stealth aspect that Demo has, and honestly makes Demo much better to play. Next up, I actually have Hag, who, ever since they removed the ability to beam her traps, they obviously had to add the ability to wipe away her traps. And so I think this definitely made it easier for all survivors to counter her power, but that doesn't mean that she still isn't incredibly strong. Over the last year or so, I'd say, she has gotten these minor tweaks. For instance, like increasing the range of her teleport, and then also increasing the trap activation distance. Just a bunch of small stuff that adds up, and I honestly think Hag in the right hands is a mid B tier to high B tier killer. And another surprise after Hag, I think Doctor is really good. In the right hands, I think Doctor can be one of the most oppressive killers in the game. It makes me sad that this killer is so reliant on good ping, because if you've been around here for a while, I really only get 70 to 80 ping. The closest server to me is in Virginia, which is like a good 500 miles from Wisconsin. So I'm not getting like 30, 40 ping, where this killer is actually really good. And typically, 70 to 80 ping is great on killer, but on Doctor, it can kind of lead to your shocks being refunded and a survivor just making it through the window or over a pallet anyways. And also, they've done quite a few changes to his AoE shock. I think the cooldown is in like the 40-second range right now, and he also moves pretty fast while doing it. So you definitely don't lose any distance if you are trying to start a new chase. And after my last video talking about Chucky, I do think with the recent buffs, Chucky has definitely gotten a little bit easier to play. Being a third-person killer, being so short, and having built-in stealth definitely makes Chucky one of the... It definitely has an inherent edge over like any other stealth killer, because you have stealth on command, you're third person, and you're the smallest killer in the game. So on top of having no terror radius, you are incredibly hard to see. And I would honestly say that Wraith is easier to spot than a Chucky. Which I do hope that Chucky eventually gets a rework to where he's not third person all the time. Having that transition from carrying a survivor at max FOV and then going back into third person just feels so gross that I would rather just play. There's like that 2 or 3 second window where you have that full FOV and it feels so good. I'm just rambling, but I still think Chucky is a middle of the pack killer, and honestly is not as bad as people might think. So that rounds out the B tier, and now the C tier is kind of a collection of killers that I think have either underwhelming powers, clear counterplay in palettes, or just pre-dropping ballots, are reliant on maps, and especially because maps are getting worse, and really just killers with outdated powers, as I said before. One killer that really is hurt by not only an outdated power, but also really poor map design is Deathslinger. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think Kaneki should have just been a Deathslinger rework. They spent all this time into getting the license and creating an entirely new killer when they could have just given Deathslinger the ability to grapple, give him like a couple of shots, and he has that clear reload, which I think would definitely make him where he's just been, like, Deathslinger has just been stagnant for 2-3 years now. And so I think this would give like a revitalization to one of the highest skill ceiling killers in the game. And really, they've been kind of silently nerfing a lot of maps where you can do cool stuff with Deathslinger, which is kind of the entire purpose of playing this killer, is to clip farm essentially. And so while they continue to nerf spots that his harpoon gun could fit through, I can't really put him into the B tier, although I think he is just about as good as Hag or Doctor. Next up, you have Clown, who is kind of an interesting case because he's so oppressive in chase, yet his map mobility boils down to 10% haste for 6 seconds. And like, that's just, I just don't see how that's good. While this killer is partially fun, and I do think there is a skill aspect, the lack of map mobility and really just the ability to pressure generators, I think, is what makes Clown so weak, because there's really not much you can do besides just downing people fast enough. And speaking of downing people fast enough, I think Pig definitely lacks in her chase ability. Like, sure, her ambush dash is still really good at anti-loop, but I'm not even sure if she moves at 4 meters a second right now while she's in power. I think it's still a 3.9. I could be mistaken, but Pig, her entire thing is her traps, and that's about it. Especially because there is a decent amount of trap searches to where you could have one person search, get their trap off in the first box, 2 boxes, and then you have 2 survivors that get 4 boxes when there hasn't been a generator completed. She's really just the queen of RNG, and in a game like Dead by Daylight, where there is so much randomness to compete with, having this much of your game slowdown tied to just luck is not a good feeling, and especially because her chase ability does not make up for that fact. And after Pig, I do have the Dredge, who I think they have kind of overbuffed, and he's still entirely map reliant. Dredge on Midwich, I think, is a high B tier killer, if not going on A tier. Then you put Dredge on a map like Hawkins, where there are basically no lockers, and if you do have a locker, it's in the worst place possible, or Haddonfield, or just any open map where there are predestined locker placements, is just the worst feeling in the world. This killer is good, but he is entirely held back by what map you get, and honestly, something like any Autohaven map, really, is an instant DC for me. It's sad because this killer is really enjoyable, and especially because the Out of Nightfall teleport speed is so good, and I want to enjoy this killer, but it really just comes down to whatever map you load into, and that is never a good feeling. And so I think when they do an overhaul eventually, I think Dredge is definitely like a mid to high B tier killer. In behavior fashion, they just do a quick band-aid fix instead of the actual root of the issue, whether that be to, I guess, save time or resources. I don't know. I'm not a behavior employee, but it is disappointing. And next up, for the first time in Myers's longevity in Dead by Daylight, I think he is actually in the C tier. This killer really was only strong because of his add-ons, and now that they have toned down his add-ons, they had to, I guess, reimburse that into something else. And his stalk speed, and especially from distance, is a massive improvement. And I think Myers, with some kind of map pressure ability, which I've always said that Myers should have like some sort of ability where his most stalked survivor, whenever he, like, you stalk survivors for a certain amount, and then you can choose your most stalked survivor and spawn behind them like 12 meters away or something, which they have the code in the game. Just Pinhead's box, whenever he teleports to the box, he spawns a certain distance away behind the survivor. And so I think Myers with any kind of ability to just get him around the map will make him much better to play. Right now, just being able to instantly down survivors at the cost of having a huge ass tear radius is not worth it. But he does feel way better to play, and anybody that wants to pick up this killer, I think now is the perfect time. Next up, another killer that has finally made it out of the depths of hell, of Dead by Daylight hell. I think Legion is definitely up there. They have continuously micro buffed this killer to the point where they're actually kind of threatening. But their lack of map mobility without having to waste their power is still a huge issue. So I think perks like batteries included are definitely very good. And overall, Legion is a very solid killer that has its clear weakness, and which is really just preying upon the inexperience of survivors. And so I can't put them any higher than C tier, but they have just squeaked it out. So now to get into the D tier, I want to start by saying that I don't think there's a specific order. All of these killers equally, quote unquote, suck. But really they just have outdated powers, or powers that were just neutered into the ground. And whether it be straight up just the same issues that Xenomorph has, where your power can just not spawn in affected areas or effective areas, whether you just have a bland projectile chase power, or you're a trap killer that has not received any meaningful rework since the game came out. And starting off, I think Ghostface is straight up just an outdated power now that they giga buffed Myers. I like the idea of individually stalking survivors, but I wish they would make Ghostface kind of like a twin situation where you have like, not like a husk, but you have another character to control, kind of like how in most movies there's actually two Ghostface, you know. I wish there was a way that you could have a clone or like a husk to control, to have some kind of map pressure. I think his entire kit is completely reliant on using drop leg knife sheath, which is easily his best add-on. It gives you 10% haste for 5 seconds, allowing you to catch up and get that marked down. And they continue to do small increments of buffing his cooldown, which, if we're being real, I think there should be two levels to his cooldown. If you attack somebody and that pulls you out of Night Shroud, it should be like 10 seconds. If you get pulled out, it should be like 15 or 20. having to wait for your power to go on cooldown without Olsen's wallet, having to wait for your power to come off cooldown when you're not using Olsen's wallet and you can just kick a pallet for downing somebody is just stupid. And honestly, I don't see a reason for this to even be that way. If you've noticed a trend there, I think there are a lot of killers that need overhauls, and yet we continue to micro nerf a bunch of killers that are just going to be inherently strong. And so another killer that I think belongs in the D tier is Onryo, who, just like Legion, is preying on the inexperience of survivors, which is never going to last at higher skill tiers. And really, with a coordinated team, I think Onryo will almost never get a kill, because it is so hard to actually secure condemn kills against really good teams. I mean, you have to be playing out of your mind, and anybody that can do that against like a comp team or some kind of 4-stack, props to you. Absolutely props to you. But I think Onryo is in that situation where getting rewarded for hooking is a good thing, but also she needs some kind of way to slug, because if you have basically no chase power outside of your TVs, then there is no way to effectively hook people fast enough in order to get condemn kills. Onryo is in that situation where she's either oppressive as hell, and I think the anti-slugging measures that they've gone to, especially with how many perks they've buffed that deal with slugging, maybe we could bring back slugging Onryo. But effectively, this killer is just not strong enough to deal with the current meta of DBD, and I think she easily needs a rework. Now, getting into the bottom 3 of straight up ass, I think Trickster belongs here. There's a lot that I think you could point to, and you wouldn't be wrong, but really making him 115 while completely neutering the effectiveness of his blades was never a really good change. The reason that Huntress is 110 is because she has one of the best long range. She has the best long range attack, and Trickster kind of fits somewhere in between a Deathslinger and Unknown, and not Deathslinger and Huntress. I think they're trying to reward people for going for long range attacks, which just aren't viable. The velocity of the knives just is nowhere near it should be for the amount that they're trying to buff this killer. And really, I'm not too well versed in Trickster, but I've seen a couple videos of people that have put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into this killer, and they all say the exact same feelings that I have, where the only thing that Trickster has going for him is his ability to camp, which is honestly up there with Bubba. And I think that's the only positive thing I can say about Trickster. While this killer is really irritating to play against as Survivor, him being 110 and having to actually aim the knives was much more enjoyable to play against than the current state. And it's kind of like Skull Merchant right now, where the power is not good enough to justify the annoyance that you have to deal with, where the killer is just so bad that you're not actually playing DBD, you're kind of just waiting to die. You know, there is no real chase, you're just hoping the killer makes a mistake. And it's not even a fast mistake, it's a slow burn. And so I really hope that Trickster gets some kind of buff. I don't really know how to buff this killer. I don't have playtime on him, and I know that his rework a year and a half ago was not for the better. And so I cannot justify putting this killer any higher, because his blades are effectively useless, and it feels like you have to force yourself in order to use his power to actually get value. At least with other zoning killers like Deathslinger and Demo, there is an inherent threat. Having this slow trickle damaging kind of just takes away the scariness of the killer. And now for the silver medal of ass, I have Trapper, who really just has an entirely outdated power. Them taking away haystacking will only affect the lower tier killers, and honestly, Trapper I think is going to be the most affected. A lot of people say Clown, and especially Hinder as well as Haste, but I think Trapper is going to be more affected than Clown. I put out a video back in like March about Haste Trapper, and it is a very fun playstyle, stacking a bunch of haste perks, especially with his ground coffee add-on that gives you 13% haste for setting a trap. It would actually make Trapper somewhat viable. Now, you don't have any gen defense, so you kind of just have to down people fast enough, but at least Trapper is somewhat enjoyable that way, and this killer just really needs a rework. And for being the poster child of this game, I'm really surprised we are going into year 9 and we still haven't gotten anything. So very disappointing, but you know, it's on the radar. It's on the radar, so we'll eventually hear about it in 2 years. And the gold medal of straight up ass obviously belongs to Skull Merchant. She effectively has no power. The threat of being scanned honestly gives you an M1 more than you're actually injuring people with the scan. And still, to this day, her stealth is like kind of bugged still, from what I know. Sometimes you get 3 seconds of undetectable. Sometimes you get 5, when I think it's supposed to be like 8 or 9. And she really just has no power. And it's not even because I say Skull Merchant is boring and I would rather just go next or DC entirely, because she has no power. There is nothing that I'm supposed to exude my skill from in order to dodge it. There's really, you stand still or crouch. Like, okay, that's not fun to play against, and I would rather just go into another game where I can play against a real killer. And they have released quite a few mock-ups of what her rework will look like, which effectively I think is like a one life twins. And so we'll see how that goes. Eventually we'll hear about that on a PTB or something. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Argue in the comments with me. Keep it respectful. If I dissed your favorite killer, tell me why I'm wrong. Don't just be a weirdo. That was like a huge thing on my last tier list. I had probably like 20 comments that were just straight up personal insults for no fucking reason. So you're a loser if you do that. And to anybody else, I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And peace out.